going for the Napoli look.
Yeah.
I figured by next year's World Series would be about the same as his. Of course, mine's a lot grayer than his, too. How's everyone doing today?
We have a mixed bunch here, so
Yeah.
it's kind of logistics and warehousing and, am I getting this right?
Yeah.
Distribution, so we have it's all different companies that are here right now.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
From where? All over the U.S. or?
Massachusetts,
Yeah.
Boston.
Oh,
Yeah,
Maryland.
Boston,
Mostly Massachusetts.
Oh, we have a Maryland.
Maryland, good.
Yep.
Excellent. So Jenny's explained all to you what's going on, right?
Trying. And Judy's got that piece over there, so.
Good.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions?
I can answer? Or?
Just curious, when you threw the stake in over there, what was that signifying?
The wind is starting to blow the berries back this way onto where I went through, so I just want to make sure I stay. It's my GPS system.
So you don't keep running over the same. You know when you mow your grass at home, you can see where you've already been. Here you can't really tell where you've already picked because the water and the fruit floats around, so
It depends
it helps
on
them mark it.
You probably should switch and go to that end and work this way because the wind is going to blow all the fruit down there.
Does the machine not damage the trees that you're running over?
No, the vines are they're pretty hardy, and so we are running right on the top of them. But with the water, it actually helps to soften that, and it doesn't do any damage to it. I mean, if you get really thick vines and you start spinning, yeah, you will do damage.
How long will it take you to do this whole bog?
A couple hours. I got a group coming this afternoon, so I'll probably wait until this afternoon to finish up the deal today.
What's the life of the bog throughout the year? I mean, maybe there's a hockey rink here in the winter, or I don't know. What happens besides the rest of the year, besides what you're doing now?
Well, this is after harvest. We'll drain the water out of the bog, and the vines will go into dormancy because they are an evergreen plant and maintain their leaves year-round. So once the vines go into dormancy, we'll begin maintenance on the irrigation systems and drainage systems, so cleaning ditches, doing irrigation system upgrades and such. And then towards the end of December, early January, we will reflood the bog to protect those vines from the cold temperatures. Cranberries have a very shallow root system, so it's not a deep root system like an evergreen tree, which goes below the frost line. So we have to reflood the bogs to protect them from the cold temperatures. When we do get a good amount of ice on them in January or February, if we get about 8 inches of ice, we'll actually come back out on top of the ice with homemade bog buggies, if you will, and spread about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of sand on top of the ice. That is not to prevent the kids from ice skating. It's actually, we use it as a cultural practice to help control and manage some of our insect, weed, and disease issues that we may face during the growing season. It's a practice we try to do every 3 to 5 years, depending on the availability of ice. It actually has the same effect as pruning. Like you may be familiar with people prune apple trees and grapes and so forth. So it has the same effect on cranberry vines. We will also try to do some pruning as well in November, as well with mechanical knife system that actually rakes through the vines, removing runners. By March, when the ice melts, we drain the water back off the bogs, and we start coming out of dormancy in April, and that's when we will reinstall our irrigation systems. The bed has a complete system of underground irrigation piping. We put a 18-inch riser with an impact irrigation head on top of it in the system. This particular bog has a 50 by 60 spacing. Irrigation system is used for frost protection in the spring and in the fall, supplemental irrigation during the summer, and is also used as our way that we deliver our, when we have to spray, we fumigate it through our irrigation system. In the spring, the most critical time period is that spring frost, because at the very tip of the bud, on the vine, is a bud that is going to break dormancy and begin to grow, and that bud is very susceptible to cold temperatures. So we have to run our irrigation systems in the spring to protect that bud from the frost. As you can see, the bog is the lowest area in the landscape, so it's where the cold air will settle in, and of course with the dikes all the way around it, it traps that cold air into the bed. So the bog can be about 10 degrees colder than the surrounding uplands. So last night, in fact, there was a frost warning that the bog temperatures could reach temperatures as low as 21 degrees. Wow. And in that case, we'd have to run our irrigation system. These berries right now can withstand temperatures as low as 23 degrees. So it's amazing how cold of a temperature these little guys can withstand. In the growing season, we begin our integrated pest management program through June, May, June, July, August, where we're out here on a weekly basis scouting for insects, identifying. We actually have a sweep now, like a butterfly net, where we catch insects, identify what they are, whether they're friend or foe, determine whether or not they've reached an economic level that would cause economic damage to the crop, and that's what we would actually spray. We also use pheromone traps, which basically are sex pheromone that attracts either the male or female of a particular moth or insect. We use that to project out when peak egg laying time would be for insects as well. And then in the summer is also irrigation time, and we actually use tensiometers, or basically soil moisture probes, if you will, to try to determine exactly what the soil moisture is and irrigate based upon that. All of that type of stuff now today is computerized. We have computers in the pump house with remote probes out onto the bog, and so I can gather all my information on my smartphone and actually start my irrigation pump from my phone. So it's really has changed tremendously of how the technology has been adapted into the industry. The cranberries will bloom in June, in middle of June, early July, and then that's when we bring in honeybees to actually do a lot of our pollination. We do, unlike corn, which relies on water and rain to pollinate, we need an insect to do our pollination for us. So honeybees are the primary pollinator. So we actually rent hives. We rent 60 hives. It costs me about, it's one of the most expensive things we do during the year, other than harvest. It costs me about $5,000 to rent bees for 4 weeks. I don't even get a jar of honey at the end of that. So really, it is critical to our, in order to set the fruit. One of the things that we've also been trying to do is increase the habitat for native pollinators by planting plants, pollinator-friendly plants on the various parts of the farm that we don't use, and to try to get a bloom that will last from April through October. So we provide a habitat for honeybees, leafcutter bees, orchard bees, because we're finding those native pollinators are actually much better pollinators than the honeybee. They'll work in adverse weather conditions. They'll work in when it's cloudy, windy, cold, rainy, and so forth. So like I say, I think the honeybee had a better union that was representing them. Because when you have those types of conditions, they're back at the hive. They fly back to the hive real quick. So it's really is a, pollination's been a key part of, it's a critical part during the growing season.
What are some examples of the faux insects that you're looking at?
That's so many examples, I'm sorry.
The insects that are faux that
We have a variety of different insects. I mean, most of you from Massachusetts have heard of winter moth, right? That have been decimating a lot of our foliage on trees. Fine, they can actually be a pest on cranberries early in the season when they'll actually eat the bud and the leaves. So we have to monitor for winter moth, and there are other vine-eating insects too that we find. One of the most common that we're challenged with is a fruitworm. Once the berry actually sets, the moth will lay its egg in the calyx end of the berry. If you grab a berry, you see the very end of the berry is calyx end. And we have to collect about 200 berries per section of bed. And I look under a microscope or with a magnifying glass to look for an egg to see whether it's live or viable. So those types of things that we have to deal with. Fruitworm. There are also root grubs. Sometimes if you have grubs in your lawn, we have the same thing in cranberries, grubs in your lawn. One of the things that we're seeing is that a lot of natural predators are re-emerging as we're changing our pest management strategies, and in particular, like there are parasitic wasps now that are very aggressive in laying their egg in the egg of the fruitworm. So they actually have been doing a lot of that natural control. So we're seeing fruitworm pressures decrease somewhat as well. Yes.
So you're a first-generation grower, and your farm's been here since the 1800s. How do you get into cranberry growing? Was this what you wanted to do when you grew up, when you were little, or?
Well, when I grow up, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. But I went to school for agriculture, went to high school for ag, went to UMass. My degrees in plant soil science, and actually was going to be an ag education instructor teacher. I spent a year in the classroom and decided I have great respect for those in the classroom that I just couldn't do it. And then I started working actually in my another grower, but also worked for Ocean Spray. And at that time, they had an agricultural research division that did integrated pest management scouting. So that's where I started really getting more and more involved in cranberries. I knew I wanted to do agriculture, and I didn't think I was going to move to Iowa and grow corn. And so I actually started working for the trade association that represents the cranberry industry in Massachusetts, and eventually